Pull us through your door, what do you think you would do? Today, what would you do in America if a beggar came to your door most of the time? You might ignore them, you might slam the door in your face, and if you're a really nice person, you'll help them. In Switzerland, it was basically kind of a law that you were supposed to invite them in, help them, put them up for the night. This is where the Swiss are very different from Americans. So a lot of times, you would invite this complete stranger into your house, they would spend the night, and how many of you would trust a complete stranger spending the night in their home? It'd be pretty difficult, you know? So that's one of the other reasons that they kept these large dogs around. Now, this is a note from Dr. Adolf Scheidegger to Albert Heijn in 1914. According to a farmer, a dog is good if he is vigilant and fierce without biting, is always at the heel when walking with the master, walks between the wheels of the cart and not through the crops, defends the master if necessary, guards the goods left with him in the field, does not stray, hunt and kill, does not harass cats and chickens, and does not roam about. The alertness of the Bernese Mountain Dog is a keenly prominent feature. They love to be with children and are their most faithful playmate. They are attentive and observe everything. They deliver evidence of the highest intelligence and reasoning, and are lively and agile, very devoted, loving and faithful, and without cunning. They are also courageous and fearless, but not ruffians. All of these traits are far-reaching qualities attained through age-old selective breeding. So one of the jobs that the Bernese Mountain Dog had to do was to keep the homestead safe. And real quick, I'm going to stop here. Most of the pictures that you see in the presentation today are from my personal collection. And if you want, after the class, usually the specialties that I drive to, I bring a lot of it with me, which I did. But I've collected Bernese Mountain Dog memorabilia and artifacts for the whole time I've been in the breed. So I have hundreds and hundreds of antique photos and postcards and stuff. So a lot of stuff you'll see in my collection. And eventually I'll be writing a book that kind of showcases it all. So the Bernese Mountain Dog was expected to announce strangers and to keep wild animals such as wolves, bears, and swine off the premises. The dog was a respectable size. He bonded with his people. He was very close to his humans, but he was also very shy and aloof to strangers. And this is where some of you may have seen on the BernerUBMDHistory-Part list, and I've actually posted the 3 temperaments of a Bernese Mountain Dog. I have a dog at home named Chaucer, who I mentioned at the beginning. Chaucer thinks that anybody who's coming to the house is visiting him. He'll wag his tail. The minute you come in the house, he'll jump on you. He doesn't care who you are. And, you know, Gary will get upset with me for saying this, but if you were to come to our house, Chaucer would show you where the valuables were. He'd bake you a cake and escort you out the door. That's how friendly he is. Ginger, on the other hand, she kind of lets you know what a bitch really is. She does. She'll bark her head off at you. She'll give you a pretty difficult time. But then within about 10 minutes, she'll warm up to you and she'll be pretty friendly to you. Now we have friends who have a dog named Sterling. And I love Sterling to death. He's this big, gorgeous dog. He would never injure anybody. He wouldn't hurt a fly. But Sterling's this big dog. Now when you come to his house, he will literally bark at you. He'll give you a hard time. He'll eventually lay at his owner's feet though, and he'll stare at you out of the corner of his eye the entire time you're there. And it doesn't matter how many times I've gone to this friend's house, he'll just keep doing it. Now, of these 3 temperaments, which temperament sounds like the kind of dog that a Swiss farmer would have had? The third one, for sure. The third one. And that's exactly, you know, that's one of the things I say is, you know, we're seeing a lot of Berners. While it is desirable to have a Berner like Chaucer, who's extremely friendly and loves everyone, you know, we have kind of gotten away from what the breed was originally bred to do. And there are people who have argued with me that Berners were not necessarily guard dogs, but that was part of their job on the farm as an all-purpose farm dog. They did have to guard somewhat. So, and many of the kennels actually also started to select larger dogs to breed for the same reasons, because they had farms and they were cattle breeders as well. Now, Jeremias Goethel was a Swiss author. He wrote about Swiss farm life from 1836 to 1850. Now, in many of his books, he gives very good descriptions of dogs that are pretty vivid. He doesn't actually come out and say that they were tricolored, but he does give us some descriptions that might lead us to believe that he could have been describing a dog pretty similar to a Bernese Mountain Dog. Here we have, on the ledge of the side on the mountain, a big dog was visible for a long time, motionless as if made of stone. As the farmer returning home walked over the crest of the mountain, the motionless figure suddenly moved, gave a sound or two, and then started downwards, tiptoeing with his tail wagging.
I question the tiptoeing.
The tiptoeing, yeah, the tiptoeing. Now, one of the other stories that he wrote a book about, he had kind of a series of books about a guy named Michael. And one of the themes throughout the entire series of books is that Michael had a dog that was very faithful to him and kind of went on his adventures with him. And these were books written for adults, by the way. But he starts telling in one story about Michael's courtship to a young bride. And he writes of Barry, who is a very excellent dog with power of a lion and human sense, and in whose presence no one would dare touch Michael, and was therefore loved by Michael like a twin brother. So, does this kind of sound like it could be describing a Bernese Mountain Dog? Historians believe that it is. We could question it just a little bit, but we'll go with kind of what some of the historians say. And then, of course, we have Jeremiah's goat health again. In this story, it's describing a Bernese Mountain Dog who is kind of protecting the farmer's daughter when a mercenary or beggar was nearby. Blaze looked at the girl as if he understood what was asked and never left her side, wherever she went. He sat at her feet when she stopped to work and showed the tinker the teeth to let him know to show respect. Now, back then, a tinker was a guy who would go through the Swiss mountains. If you had pots and pans that needed repaired, he would repair them for you. You would give him food for the night. You would, put him up for the night. And incidentally, this picture clearly shows a dog that looks exactly like a Berner. And it is from 1883, and it was published in an American magazine called Harper's Bazaar. So it's kind of interesting because you can clearly tell that is a dog that looks like a Berner. Now, if you notice, I'm not saying it is a Berner. One of the reasons I'm going to tell you this is that we cannot say that Berners were a breed until 1907. So if I refer to any dog before 1907, it's a pre-Berner to me, or a Berner ancestor, but it's not a Berner, because the breed was not typically a breed, or officially recognized as a breed until 1907. So we're going to go back to the Swiss farmer, and we're going to talk a little bit about some of the wording that you'll hear in Switzerland. In areas above 1,000 meters all year long, farming was climatically impossible because of the long periods of deep snow cover. As far back as the Middle Ages, the nobility and monasteries sent their herds up onto the high-altitude meadows to graze during the summer months. They were attended to by a cooer. Coo means cow, and sen would be the drover or cattle herdsman. And there are no longer sen in Switzerland. It's pretty much a fairy tale, and it is alive in folklore only. Berner is the name of the dog because they come from the canton of Bern in Switzerland, and Hund means dog in a Swiss dialect as well, and German. In the German dialect, it will have an E on the end of the word. Sennenhund, therefore, would be a dog that accompanies the Sen on his journeys. So between the 16th and 18th century, these Kuer had worked themselves up to become independent owners of cow herds. The high-altitude grazing land belonging to the landowners was being leased to them. They didn't actually own a lot of this land. They would kind of take their herd there, let their herd eat the grass and everything, then they'd move on a little bit. The Kuer traded cattle and dairy products independently and became pretty well respected and known experts on everything having to do with cattle and dairy issues. Now, the Kuer cares that his cows don't get lost in the wilderness, and he takes them into the barn that houses his cows, and he milks them twice a day, and they produce cheese from the milk. Preparation and storage of the cheese is one of the secret arts in which the Kuers had to be experts. You gotta remember, back then we didn't have refrigerators. They probably didn't have ice boxes in the summer months, so it still is actually kind of a mystery of how they actually preserved some of the cheeses that many believe that they may have put them in underground caves and things like that, but we don't really have actual evidence of that at this point. So the valley farmers and the Kuer developed an intensive cooperation that benefited both sides and was found nowhere else. It was very unique to the area. The farmers would loan the Kuer their land. The Kuer would then pay them and also give them cheese and dairy products and things like that. So it was a mutually beneficial relationship.